Today, I'm following the well-known YouTube format of making a tier list, where I'm applying that to my habits and trying to rank them from most impactful to somewhat impactful. If you're new here, my name is Jarle, and on Early Owl, we try to figure out what habits to build. The rating system I'm using is as follows. We have the S tier. These are the habits I feel have the most potential to leave a positive impact on your life. And I think this often comes with a chance of having some compounding effects that you do the habit and it leads to one positive change that then bleeds into everything else in your life. Then you have the A tier. These are habits that are good to improve in a specific area or come with some very specific benefits, but either come also with some downside or doesn't have the same far-reaching consequences that I feel like the S tier habits have. And lastly, you have the B tier, which are habits that I still think are good for me and that I still think is worth picking up, but that hasn't had the same visceral impact on either a lot of areas in my life or a specific area in my life. I'm only including habits here that I would recommend in the first place, so that's why it basically just goes to B tier, because there's no point of me like ranking, oh, don't do this, but don't do this even less. Just one quick caveat. You have the holy trinity of habits of a good consistent sleep schedule, exercise, and diet. I'm not going to add this to the list because they would all be S tier, and I think everyone knows that this is something they should be working towards. So instead, I'll add a few habits that support some of these behaviors. Meal prep is not a habit I think I've talked about much on this channel before, but it is something I try to do whenever I'm in control of my diet, which is just I prepare out the meals for like a week in advance or something. It has a lot of smaller benefits that I like. I think if you meal prep, it's generally cheaper to eat, and it's also just completely removes any decision from what you need to eat because you've already prepared it in advance. And I think that aspect of it makes it much easier to stick to a diet. If you already have the food you're going to eat, then you're not going to be tempted, and you don't even have to go to the store, for example, because you already have everything prepared. I think meal prep can be particularly helpful if you're eating lunch at work, for example, because when you are going out to eat every day, then that gets a lot more expensive, and it's also a lot easier to get tempted into bad decisions. I think a downside here for a lot of people is that it will become more monotonous having a bunch of meals prepared in advance. But for me, I generally would eat like that anyway, or that's how I eat even when I'm just eating whatever. I have like a few meals that I cycle between, so it doesn't bother me at all. So meal prep is a good habit overall. Like, it saves time, it saves money, and it makes it easier to stick to your diet. But it's also not going to completely change your life, so it goes into the A tier. Reading, I think, is one of the best habits you can pick up. I already have a video on this, but the main reason is that I think reading is the habit that just kind of unlocks all the other positive changes you can make. No matter what you're struggling with or want to improve, there's probably dozens or even hundreds of books written about it. And I do think reading a book is one of the best ways to consume information in a way that actually makes lasting changes. So reading goes into the S tier because it's the habit that unlocks all the other positive changes you can make. Journaling is another habit I have a video on, and it is something that I enjoy and that is very nice to do in the morning for me. That is part of my morning routine. I think journaling can be very nice, especially if you want to appreciate your life more, or you feel like you're lacking some direction, or you're not sure what's important to you, because it can help kind of hone in on those things. But for me, journaling hasn't led to any like significant impacts or improvements in any specific area of my life. So even though I like doing it, the main reason why I'm keeping it up is that it's pretty easy to do, and it's just a nice way to start the morning. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Self-restriction is whenever I use a tool like Kitchen Safe or Cold Turkey or anything else to block off bad behavior. And maybe a bit weird to call it habits, but it is something I try to do every day when I'm being conscious of my decisions. And I do think it really helps me, especially in like a transition period when I'm going from a bad period to a good period. Then I think it's a crucial part of getting out of that process. But when I'm already on top of everything and everything is going well, then I generally don't need the guardrails anymore. So it's really helpful in certain periods, but not crucial at all times. So I'm going to put it into the A tier. The habit here is just taking a walk the first thing in the morning, where the goal is to get some light exercise, obviously, but mostly it is about getting that sunlight. And I've come to appreciate more and more just how crucial I think this is when it comes to having a good, consistent sleep schedule. I do think this is the one most important thing you can do. You wake up at the same time and then you go out and you get some sunlight. So for that reason, it's going into the S tier. Stretching is something that can be good to do in breaks. So I'm not talking about the breaks specifically here. That's a separate habit, which I will get to. This is a habit I've done a lot these past few years, and I'm going to keep doing it, but I've never felt like it's as beneficial as it should be. Like when I don't notice a big difference when I'm stretching before working out or not. And similarly, if I'm struggling with some muscle issue like RSI or anything else, I do stretching because it's one of the few things I can do, but it's never as impactful as I should be. Like I feel like the improvements compared to the stretches that I'm doing is quite random. And sometimes I improve when I'm not stretching, and sometimes I put a lot of effort into stretching or try different stretches. And it's very hard to see a correlation between something positive and the stretches themselves. So even though I think it's good for me and I'm going to keep doing it, I'm going to put it into B tier. Having a good morning routine can be basically anything, just that you wake up the same way every day and that this gets your day started off to a good way. I do think having a good morning routine for me is a habit that is not going to change anything on its own. Like if you don't have other good habits and other good work routines, then this won't change anything. But I do think having a good morning routine is really important for consistency. Like the only way I can consistently do my best throughout the rest of the day is to make sure the morning starts off well. Like if I start the first 30 minutes of my day on my phone or checking out Reddit or something, then there is a good chance this is just going to bleed into everything else of my day. So morning routine goes into the A tier. Time blocking is when you try to plan out your entire day, or at least your entire workday, into specific chunks of time where each chunk is kind of assigned to a task. And then if you break that plan, then you redo it and then you redo it. And the goal is to just get better and better at this and just always plan out your entire day and exactly what you're going to do on that specific time. And I have been doing this on and off. And in terms of productivity, I feel like it's probably one of the best things you can do. The downside is that it's very hard to do and that it's also adds a bit of stress and it adds a bit of kind of friction to work. So the upsides are great, but it also comes with some downsides. So for that reason, it's going into the A tier. Meditation is a very subtle habit, unlike some of the others, where you don't notice benefits right away. It's not like you just meditate 10 minutes for a week and then you're completely changed. But it has so many far-reaching consequences that impact such important areas of our lives, like basically everything we care about when it comes to having better relationships or being more happy, that even though it's quite subtle and it takes a long time to build benefits from it, I do still think it belongs in the S tier category. A deep work habit is basically just that you have some part of your day, preferably in the morning before you do anything else, where you're deeply focused on specific tasks and you don't let in any distractions. And I think this is the best bang for your buck in terms of improving your productivity. If you're not already doing this, then I think it can really move the needle and just make you do a lot more done. And the only thing you need to do is just carve out a few hours where you just get rid of all distractions and you have specific goals in mind, and then you just see the results come. So I'm going to put this into the S tier. So for sleeping and waking up early, I think there's two main benefits. First of all, if you have like a side project or something that you're trying to do alongside work, and you have a hard time finding the energy or the motivation or whatever to do it after you get home from work, then I think the only really good and reliable way to combat this is to wake up earlier, like no matter how early it is, and just work on it for a few hours before work. The other thing it's helpful for is this morning walk where you try to get sunlight, because there is a different quality of the light in the morning than it is in the evening. But this can also shift depending on your time zones, and in some places during the winter, waking up early might mean that there's no sun at all. So it's not an inherent benefit. And similarly to the morning routine, I don't think this is a habit that's going to change things on its own. It's more just a supporting habits for other positive things. So for that reason, it's going into the A column. Inbox zero is another habit I have a video on. And for me, email isn't like a crucial part of my work or my day-to-day life. So it is not something that stresses me out generally. The main reason I like to do this habit is because it is nice to just know that I'm on top of things, and this just put my mind at ease. And also because I do have to process these emails anyway. So it's good to just do it in a systematic way. But it doesn't like significantly change my life to be on top of my emails. And my emails don't stress me out unless I'm already stressed out anyway. So I'm going to put this in the B tier. So it's nice to do, but not super crucial for me. In a recent video, I did say that taking regular breaks is the most overlooked way to increase your productivity, and I do believe that. To me, it has just become such a clear win-win situation where you can take more breaks and get more done, and there's basically no downside to doing it. It's good for your stress, it's good for how much you get done. It is just an inherent good. I think taking regular breaks is one of those supporting habits that just helps every other area of your life. And it's pretty easy to do it when you get into the habit of doing it. What type of breaks you take is very important for this one though. So I would recommend you check out my video on taking breaks. Because it's such a clear win-win and also so overlooked, I'm going to put it into the S tier. So that was all the habits I felt like fitting into this video. A few honorable mentions is cleaning. I think it's very important to have a nice clean environment for being your best mental self. But for me, I don't have a specific habit around cleaning. It is more just something I do when I feel I have some time or I just need to reset my mind, then I like to do some chores. Learning is another habit that I think is very well worth doing, but it is much more of an individual thing. Like you should first figure out what you want to learn instead of just being like, oh, learning is a good habit to have, so I'm going to learn Spanish even though I don't care about Spanish. I do already have a bunch of videos on some of my habits, so I'm going to link to a playlist here where I go through the different habit videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.